Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed.
Private member motion number 14 of 2014-15, amendment to the liquor licensing law 2000 revision, to be moved by the elected member for Northside.
I recognize the honourable member from the District of Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to move private members motion number 14, amendment to the liquor licensing law 2000 revision. Whereas the liquor licensing law 2000 revision in section 10, subsection 10 states, no person may import into the islands intoxicating liquor in excess of 1 gallon unless he is the holder of a license. And whereas this restriction unfairly protects the license holders, as it appears all categories of license can import intoxicating liquor. And whereas Caymanian residents and visitors who may wish to import intoxicating liquor for personal consumption or to give to friends as gifts, but not for sale in excess of 1 gallon. Be it therefore resolved that government consider amending the liquor licensing law to allow Caymanians, residents and visitors to import for personal use up to 5 cases of intoxicating liquor and pay the duty rate established in the customs law for any amount in excess of that allowed under Schedule 2 of the Customs Tariff Law 2014 revision.
Is there a seconder? Recognize the member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
The motion has been duly moved and is now open for debate. Does the honourable member from Northside wish to expand upon his motion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this restriction, I believe, is a little bit onerous on Caymanians who wish to bring in intoxicating liquor, because if you arrive at the airport now with 5 liter, 1 liter bottles of liquor, the government, the customs, is forced under the law to confiscate anything excess of 4 point something liters. And what the motion is seeking to do is allow persons who arrive at the airport or to the port with liquor in excess of 1 gallon to pay the full duty on it, but import the liquor. I just think, Madam Speaker, that a 1 gallon restriction is very small when you look at the prices and markups that the liquor establishments put on retail liquor in this country, as was mentioned in the previous motion, and sometimes greater than 100% markup. And I'm not asking that the people be allowed to import more than the 1 liter duty-free, which is currently allowed, but they'd be allowed to bring in excess of the 1 gallon. And I'm suggested 5 cases, but you know, if the government wants to amend that to 2 or 3, I'm not adverse to that. But I just think that this offers, I believe, undeserved and unearned protection for the people who already have distributor liquor license in the island. And I just ask the government to consider amending it to allow, as it says in the motion, up to 5 cases, clear understanding that the only amount of that is duty-free is the 1 liter that is currently provided for under Schedule 2 of the Customs Tariff Law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for Financial Services.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's an obvious balance to be struck on this issue. The licensing of alcohol, distribution and sale, and therefore the regulation of it, is one which I think well, I shouldn't say every, but many societies, many countries around the world engage in. There are societal concerns. There are also concerns about ensuring that businesses are supported that are involved in this area and are properly regulated. I see where the member's going in terms of his motion. I can see where there's an issue with the current provision in the liquor licensing law, which allows a gallon to be brought in without a license, and alcohol typically these days may be described more in terms of liters. The bottling is different. It's typically in a more the metric system. So I see that as being a potential issue. But Madam Speaker, while on behalf of the government we don't feel that we can accept the motion as it is, particularly given that we're talking about 5 cases of alcohol, which could have, it's not related to volume, it could have varying volumes involved. We are in the process of redrafting the liquor licensing law. And I would certainly, though we don't feel we're in a position to accept this motion, I would certainly commit to the member that I will ensure that he is consulted during this process and we examine ways of addressing the concern that he may be, which may be behind the motion which he has brought. So, Madam Speaker, I don't intend to go into a lot of detail. I'm not sure that it's necessary. This motion is similar in some respects to the discussions we had earlier on the other motion. And I hope that with the indication to the member that I will consult with him on his specific concern in this area, that we can move past this and get his concerns addressed, and something which reflects a consensus with the government in terms of the final revised form of the liquor licensing law that we will propose to take forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the honourable member from Northside if he wishes to exercise the right of reply.
Just to say, Madam Speaker, that I understand the minister says he's revising the law. And he's given me an undertaking that he will consult me on this section of the law. But this revision of this liquor license law has been a long time coming. I am almost of the view at this stage, Madam Speaker, because of the black market that exists out there in liquor licensing, so to speak, and the illegal actions that people who don't have any facility, who don't have anywhere, but have a liquor license in their pocket that they can rent to somebody who wants to open a proper facility because the person that has a proper facility can't get a license, that we need to simply repeal the law and let market forces take place over the control of it, because it's a legal substance they're selling. And all of these restrictions simply add to the amount of money that people can make out of this business. So I would be happier if the government just came and said we want to repeal the liquor licensing law, and anybody who wants to open a restaurant and bar meet the other criteria of safety and health and all this stuff, right? And because we're unable to enforce the law, because I can find no provision in the law that allows me as a person to be licensed to sell liquor. It is the facility that is licensed. But I'm happy to hear that the government is actively considering the revision of the law, and I'll be happy to sit down with the minister and help him repeal all the sections of it that I think need to repeal, and we can bring the law back with the title and the final date, and all of us will be happy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, be it therefore resolved that government considers amending the liquor license law to allow Caymanians, residents, and visitors to import for personal use up to 5 cases of intoxicating liquor and pay the duty rate established in the custom law for any amount in excess of that allowed under Schedule 2 of the Custom Tariff Law 2014 revision. All those in favor, please say aye. All those against, no.
No.
The noes have it. The motion has accordingly failed.
Private Member Motion number 15 of 2014-15, Amendment to the Immigration Law 2014 revision, to be moved by the elected member for Northside.
Elected member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to move private member's motion number 15, Amendment to the Immigration Law 2014 revision. Whereas there is much concern amongst Caymanians that the Business Staffing Plan Board is not protecting their opportunities for employment, and whereas the Caymanian worker seeking employment has no way of finding out what positions have been approved in a business staffing plan, or when permits will expire, or what scholarships and training are required as conditions of a business staffing plan. Be it therefore resolved that government consider amending Section 45 of the Immigration Law 2014 revision to require that all businesses that have a business staffing plan make them available for inspection during normal working hours of the business by any member of the public.
Is there a seconder? Honourable member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
The motion has been duly moved and is now open for debate. Does the honourable member from Northside wish to speak to the motion?
Madam Speaker, the immigration law in Section 45 provides an elaborate mechanism by which companies or individuals who employ more than 15 persons on work permits must apply for a business staffing plan. A big part of the business staffing plan is to allow the company to inform the Immigration Board of their work permit needs for 5 years and indicate how they will replace work permit holders with Caymanians. Some of the provisions of the business staffing plan as detailed in the law are, and I quote from Section 45(1). Every company, firm, or other business enterprise which has carried out business for 6 months or more, or after the 1st of January 2004, and employs 15 or more persons on work permits, shall, no later than the 31st of March 2007, submit to the Business Staffing Plan Board a business staffing plan in accordance with Schedule 3 of the regulations. 2, every company, firm, or other business enterprise other than those referred to in subsection 1 carrying on business within the islands shall, as of the date they commenced employing 15 or more persons on work permits, submit to the Business Staffing Plan Board a business staffing plan in accordance with Schedule 3 of the regulations within 6 months of such date. And Madam Speaker, we know that many of the companies ignored those time frames in the legislation and were left without proper business staffing plan when those dates expired. But, Madam Speaker, experience indicates that the Business Staffing Plan Board has not made much of an effort to monitor or enforce the agreed provisions of the approved business staffing plan. To further compound this lack of monitoring, it appears that administrative staff in the Immigration Department are issuing work permits for companies who have business staffing plans without reference to the Business Staffing Plan Board or to the business staffing plan. Experience also indicates that employers or their lawyers manipulate this process and choose where they send their applications in order to get what their client wants, whether it complies with the business staffing plan or not. And, Madam Speaker, the young, qualified Caymanian, and these are the people that I'm concerned about here, not concerned about people who are not qualified for these jobs, tell me that they come back from college with their, and I'll pick on the accountants for convenience, with their bachelor's degree in accounting, their CPA, some of them with a master's in accounting degree. They go around to these forums and they present their CVs and they're told there's no vacancies, but they have 100 work permits. And these young people believe that if they could say, but I would like to see your business staffing plan, they could look at the business staffing plan and say, yes, you don't have any vacancies at the moment, but I noticed from your business staffing plan that John Doe, who is an accountant, who has a bachelor's degree, who has a CPA, his work permit expires in 3 months. And I would like the opportunity to apply for that specific post because we have the same qualifications. I have said to them, yes, but some of these people may have 3 or 4 years experience. And they say, well, yeah, that's true. But we are prepared to start at a lower salary just to get in the door. Or if we could see the competencies of John Doe, we may see that, yes, we both have an accounting degree. We both have our CPA. Yes, he has 3 years experience and I don't have any, but he only has Excel. Maybe in the next 3 months I can go and get the whole Microsoft suite so that I will have that advantage over him. But the important thing is that I will know that this position is becoming vacant in 3 months. And I can prepare myself and come back and apply for that specific job. And I think, Madam Speaker, that that's very rational and has a lot of common sense in it. But unless we make the business staffing plan a document that can be inspected by these young people, they have no way of knowing. Second thing that these young qualified Caymanians complain about is that while they're at university in America or Canada or England with their friends, all of their friends, many of whom they are excelling academically above and getting better marks and everything else, but they are being hate-hunted by all of the corporations that surround that university and other places who come there looking for the brightest and the best. But when they talk to them, well, we can't work in the States because I don't have a green card or I can't do this, right? But when they come back here and they go to these local institutions and they present their academic credentials, they're treated like criminals. No respect is shown to them. There is no belief that these people have made an effort to attain these academic qualifications, and that in itself requires a certain amount of self-application and effort to get it. And you're simply told we don't have any vacancies. Or you're told, yeah, we'll take your thing, and if anything comes up, we'll contact you. Nobody contacts them. And they get no joy in complaining to the Business Staffing Plan Board because nothing happens. And Madam Speaker, this is happening to both specters of the employment workforce in Cayman. The young people are told they don't have any experience, so they're not qualified for the job. People my age, or 10 years, or 15 years younger than me, are being told they're overqualified for the job because they have 15, 20 years experience. So nobody gets an opportunity to get into the thing. And Madam Speaker, the purpose of this motion is to at least allow the Caymanians who will make the effort to try and find themselves employment and who believe they're qualified for it can go to these institutions and get this information. And I don't think this is a situation where everybody off the street going to want to come in and look at their business staffing plans and see what they have, or their competitor going to worry about it, come over and want to steal information off their business staffing plan. There's nothing in the business staffing plan that is confidential, because the advertisement that's put in the paper, they have to give the competencies that they require, what qualifications they want. They have to put at least a salary band in the ad, so the salary is known, right? So there's really nothing of proprietary interest that they need to protect. It is just one other step in the ladder, Madam Speaker, that I believe will assist young, qualified, ambitious, hard-working Caymanians of getting their foot in the door of some of these companies and organizations. So, Madam Speaker, without this access to this information and this knowledge of what the Business Manpower Act want, and even people seeking scholarships, right? Because all of these organizations will submit these and agree to these conditions of the business staffing plan that they're going to provide 3, 4, 5 scholarships. And when you go and ask them for it, they say they don't have any scholarships to give. But if you can look at the business staffing plan, you can see what they're offering a scholarship for, and you can apply specifically for that scholarship. So I believe there's several reasons, Madam Speaker, why companies that have business staffing plan should be made by law to make them available for inspection, particularly by people who are seeking employment and who are qualified to seek that employment. So, Madam Speaker, I ask the government to amend the legislation to assist these, particularly the young, qualified Caymanians who are looking work and can't find any in this economy at the present time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. I recognize Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as both the Minister with responsibility for immigration and as Premier, I wish to respond briefly to this motion on behalf of the government. Madam Speaker, the issues raised by the member from Northside are issues which are of concern to the government as well. We acknowledge that the whole business staffing plan regime is not working the way that it was envisaged it would work. From both perspectives. One, there isn't adequate follow-up with respect to what I think are called Reg 6s, Regulation 6 provisions, which are usually attached to the various positions, posts within the business staffing plan, and which require the employer to find and identify Caymanians to train up to or to understudy these particular posts. And there aren't adequate mechanisms in place for that enforcement to be done. There's also the issue of scholarships, which in many instances are agreed to as part of the business staffing plan. and we don't have in place a proper mechanism again so that these scholarships are published, or even that the Education Council itself is aware of these scholarships. So we are working to see what we can do to address those issues. Conversely, the whole business staffing plan regime seems to have become somewhat, I don't want to use that bad word, somehow misinterpreted, misapplied, in the sense that the business staffing plan board was never envisaged to be just another work permit board. And quite frankly, in most instances, based on what the reports that I get, and that's not today, that's what happens, is that each application for a work permit there goes through the same process and scrutiny as does an application to the work permit board. The whole purpose of having a business staffing plan in the first place was that you would agree in advance with the board what positions work permits would be available for over a particular period. And so when you submitted the application, you didn't have to go through this careful process of scrutiny. You just got your work permit. And the quid pro quo for that was the Regulation 6 that you would find and train Caymanians to do certain things, and the scholarships and so forth. So the government acknowledges that the regime is not working and has not worked for many years the way that it was envisaged. And we are taking steps to deal with those particular issues. However, Madam Speaker, while, as I said, we understand the concerns which have caused the member to move this motion, we do not believe that we can accede to the motion, which would require that all businesses have a business staffing plan made available for inspection during normal working hours of the business by any member of the public. That, again, is because of the commercial considerations involved with it. What that would mean, for instance, if you have two big law firms who have obviously a business plan about how they intend to grow their business and what areas of practice they want to focus on and develop. If all of these business staffing plans became generally available to the public, then their competitors would have access to that information, and obviously that would create, some significant issues with them. Were we to agree to this in this form, I think there would be a huge hue and cry around from businesses generally about their particular commercially sensitive business plans being made generally available to the public and in particular to their competitors. And so while the government is most sympathetic to the issue that has been identified by the member from Northside, and we are conscious of it ourselves and are proposing to take steps to improve that whole situation, I regret that we are unable to agree to this particular motion, which asks for the business staffing plans themselves to become essentially a public document available to inspection by anyone off the street who wishes to come and see how this particular law firm or this particular business is operating and what it's planning over the course of the next 5 years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member from the District of East End.
Madam Speaker, I won't be long. I want to first recognize that the Premier has recognized that we have a problem and the matter needs to be seriously addressed. However, I want to say to the Premier that, and the government, that whilst I understand his concern about the sensitivities in this matter and the scenario that he tried to paint with two law firms and their commercially sensitive business plan and not making that known by other firms or anyone for that matter. Madam Speaker, I understand that, and I want to sympathize with that situation. But certainly, Madam Speaker, it is time now to sympathize with Caymanians too. Madam Speaker, the Premier is right. That board, business staffing board, is not fit for purpose. We are getting nothing out of it. The Reg 6 that the Premier talked about, where we require certain training for Caymanians for those positions, is a waste of time. It's not worth the paper it's written on, because they are attaching, in contravention of the other section of the immigration law, which says for every work permit you get, you need to put some in managerial position, you need to train some Caymanian. The business staffing plan is saying for every 10 you get, you got to train one, or something of that nature. And nobody follows up on it, Madam Speaker. Nobody follows up on it. Nobody says who is responsible to follow up on it. No Caymanian knows that there are opportunities, particularly it should be within that field, or in that industry, whatever that is issued to. But nobody follows up on it. And I agree with the Premier. Something needs to be done, because we continue to issue work permits. We continue to increase our population. We continue to issue Cayman status. We continue to thicken the glass ceiling or concrete ceiling, and we have done nothing to alleviate it. Madam Speaker, the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, in their report is quite instructive on Caymanians, and they call it worrisome that such unemployment, the height of the unemployment in certain sectors, when that should be the majority, that demographic should be the majority, make up the majority of the workers in our society, in any society. And this is the young generation. They can't get there because we have put these laws in place, the immigration law, and in particular, the business staffing board, and it's creating a layer that they can't get through. And we continue to put people in position there without any consideration of who's coming behind. It bothers me, and it really should bother us all, that you have a disconnect between the business staffing board and the chief immigration officer. Madam Speaker, I witness it. The chief immigration officer issues work permits. Let me go back. The business staffing board approves a business staffing plan. Just like the Premier talked about particular positions for that institution for a period, and it details their plans for a period, how many, 4 or 5 years or whatever, how many people are going to be needing in that position. And that the law is very specific. No changes shall be made to it without the written express approval of that board. It has to go back to the board. Now we get to the disconnect. The disconnect is that the chief immigration officer can issue work permits contrary to the positions on that board, on that plan, in managerial positions. That's where the breakdown comes. That's where we need to fix. We need to fix it and fix it pronto. And I was told by one of those who give legal advice, not the legal, watch my choice of words, one of those who give legal advice to the government, that those two entities, the board and the chief immigration officer, or designated staff, delegated authority, must operate independently of each other, i.e., that the chief immigration officer can issue work permits and must make their decisions in the decision independent of the board. And they can do that. Now, what that says to me is, Madam Speaker, that it is ultra vires the law, because the law says it cannot be changed. And by extension, you can't put anyone else to work there on work permit unless it is the approval is given by the board. But what it does is that the chief immigration officer can now issue work permits to that institution without any regard for the business staffing plan. Not only that, they can issue temporary work permits. And people can operate without any concern whatsoever. Madam Speaker, you can imagine how frustrated I was when I heard that. Because if that's the interpretation of the law, the Premier, right, he needs to get on this and quickly. Because Caymanians are not benefiting from the development that we continue to look for, whether it's in the financial industry or construction industry or whatever industry we have, the tourism industry, when the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing, or the right hand can do something completely different from the left hand. Thus, the reason why Mr. Miller has elected to bring this motion, to try and cut through some of this red tape, at least get Caymanians the opportunity, because right now, they don't know what is out there. And a lot of it, Madam Speaker, of what is out there is being hidden in the business staffing plan, and they don't know, and the business staffing board, the immigration department, whichever, is not making them know. Of course, the person or the entity who has the business staffing plan don't make them know either. I've had occasion to talk to one of the institutions that I saw their business staff and plan. And it has been in place since we had the implementation of these boards. And they were supposed to provide one scholarship in that industry. And they didn't know that they needed to. They didn't know. You know, and it has to be at a recognized institution overseas or at UCCI, I believe. And not even them knew. So nobody received this scholarship all this time. So it's been in place since 2010. You know, and Madam Speaker, there is a disconnect between what we believe we are providing to help our people and what the people know and what they're getting. And until we can straighten that out, arrest that, and ensure that our people recognize it, understand what is available, we cannot expect them not to complain to us. And it gets worse when you get the officials at the top telling them institutions not to worry about people like Arden because we can't do them anything, and then guaranteeing them work permits. Everybody, any brother. That's the kind of stuff we need to stop too. Because when you advocate on behalf of Caymanians and you are, what do they say, thrown under the bus, a bus that has more tires than a caterpillar or a scorpion. Madam Speaker, these are the reasons why we bring these motions to bring to the attention of the government. And if the government can't accept it, fine. But the fact is that it's out in the forefront, and maybe we can see some relief for people in due course. Madam Speaker, I would like to wish that the government follows what the Premier has promised, that they need to look at it, and they're going to look at it. I trust that that look will be considered urgent and expedient, and we can move on with this aspect of trying to help the people who deserve it. It's a bad thing, Madam Speaker. You know, this colonial thing, we just try to hold on at the top and don't bring people from the bottom. That's what we like to do. We think we're there for life. That's the nature of this system. But Madam Speaker, so many of our young children are coming out of school. I saw the other day where there were a couple hundred registered with degrees at NWDA. That's what we know. What we don't know is how many do not go there. They come out of school with their degrees. We told them they need to get educated. Now they're telling them they need experience, which is true. But the only way you're going to get experience is get the opportunity to go in. And someone spend a little time on you to assist you and see the potential of the production in you in years to come. Madam Speaker, all them over there understand that. We all do. All of us understand that. So in order for us to facilitate young Caymanians getting that opportunity, we need to do something here. It's here. It's not out there. You think the Minister for Finance would, not finance, what name? Financial Services would have been the MD of one of the largest law firms in this country if he didn't get the opportunity? You think the Premier would have been calling himself a degree of lawyer if he didn't get the opportunity? It's about opportunity. The second elected member from Georgetown, head of one of the large Big Four or something like that, accounting firms. How you think he got there? You think he dropped like manna from heaven to get there? No, it was molasses rolling uphill. But at least he got the opportunity to roll uphill by somebody taking an interest in him. But nowadays, they don't take interest. What they do is bring their friends in. We need to stop that. And it stops right here. I said in this honorable house recently, we need to make some decisions, some tough decisions that is going to cost us our political careers. But when we're gone, because of big money influence, our conscience will be clear that we provided the opportunity for the Wayne Pattons and the Roy McTaggarts, that one day some of those Wayne Pattons and Roy McTaggarts who are young now will be at the top of these firms. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak or recognize the Honorable Minister responsible for education?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to make a few observations as it relates to this private member's motion as well. And Madam Speaker, I know this may sound a bit out of the expected, but I'd like to thank the member from Northside for bringing this motion, in the sense that whereas the government has taken a position that we can't accept the motion in its current form, as the Premier said, this is an area that the government is and has real concerns about. And I too, as Minister with constitutional responsibility for employment, helping to create and advance employment policy for the country, I do have grave concerns about the fact that we know as a government, and we have known as a government for some time, even prior to us taking office, as in this particular administration, I believe it's fair to say that governments of past have known that this system that was created does not work according to the expectations as it relates to the provisions of Regulation 6 in the immigration law, making sure that there are those clear pathways for training and experience, as Regulation 6 says. And Madam Speaker, I think it might be useful just to read quickly what Regulation 6 of the immigration law states. The board or the chief immigration officer may require an applicant for the grant or renewal of a work permit to provide details of any program that he has that is designed to ensure that Caymanians are provided with the instructions and practical experience necessary to make them fully qualified to carry out the job concern satisfactorily and as expeditiously as possible. And subsection 2 of Regulation 6 states the absence of such program or the failure to implement such a program without reasonable cause constitutes a ground for denying the grant or renewal of a work permit. Now, Madam Speaker, this issue, I think, really highlights the complexity of the employment regime that we have in the Cayman Islands, and you would recall that I would have spoken to this concept both here in the LA and in other public forums. We have a system where the issue and the mechanisms to do with employment doesn't fall necessarily under one umbrella or one ministry. And for example, I've just read from the immigration regulations, which is attached to the immigration law, which, as the Premier stated, as not only as the Premier but as Minister of Home Affairs, the matters as it relates to immigration law is the responsibility of Ministry of Home Affairs. The immigration law is really the gatekeeper law as it relates to people accessing, or I should say, persons who are, in particular as it relates to work permits, who are non-Caymanians accessing work employment, but it also talks generally about who can be gainfully employed in the country, and it lists the categories including Caymanian, etc. On the other hand, we have the Ministry of Employment, which deals with the labor law and aspects as it relates to persons once you have obtained employment, so the treatment that you're expected and what the country expects with respect to regulation of labor relations in the country. And so I just say that to highlight that this issue of employment and employment opportunities for the country is something that we have to take a holistic approach as a government, and in particular the two ministries, but then of course there are the other ministries and other departments that have a major impact on employment, which I outlined as a result of the work of the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee with respect to their report. But many of those things, I think, having turned our attention to this issue since taking office, we realize that it is a much more complex situation than saying one particular entity, but it is something that has to happen, and it has to happen with a sense of urgency. And Madam Speaker, that really is in essence why, as Minister, as I said, charged with the responsibility of looking to create and help to advance employment policies and the framework in the country, one of the first things that was done upon taking office was visiting the NWDA, which is the training and development arm of the government, the department that is there set up to try to provide the opportunities for Caymanians to advance themselves and to access employment by actually providing some sort of a central register. But up until this administration, up until we took office, Madam Speaker, there was no real nexus between the work of the labor relations arm of government, and in this case the NWDA, and the immigration department, other than the reliance on a member of the staff of the NWDA attending and sitting on various board meetings. The system itself was very inefficient. The system did not lend itself for information flow between the departments in a way that was effective and that really addressed the needs of the persons in the community, Caymanians in particular, who were trying to access the employment opportunities and who wanted to make that known to the immigration departments and permit boards before such opportunities were actually being given out in the form of work permits. And so what we did is we actually managed within the first year of taking office to develop the NWDA centralized database system with an immigration interface. Madam Speaker, this was revolutionary in the sense that anybody in the immigration department, anybody on the immigration boards, the work permit boards, and the like, they could access at their fingertips whenever they had the board meetings, whenever they have any permits that they are going to look to see whether or not the requirements of the immigration law has been conducted, in the sense that have the companies attempted to attract suitably qualified Caymanians? Are there suitably qualified Caymanians who are available locally to do the job prior to granting the permit? All of this, prior to having such a system in place, was completely reliant on what the employers themselves put forward with respect to immigration. Now we have a system that allows persons, the decision makers in the immigration department and on the work permit and staffing boards, who can then determine whether or not there are persons in the community who are suitably qualified, who have applied, and who, for whatever reason, were or were not given the opportunity to actually apply for the job, or upon applying for the job weren't given the opportunity to actually be employed. All of that information is much more transparent, it is much more efficient, and it allows the decision makers, as I say, that sit in the Department of Immigration and that sit on the boards to be able to ask the pertinent questions that they may not have been able to ask before. And Madam Speaker, certainly as Minister responsible for employment, the expectation is that those questions will be asked, and those questions would be asked prior to issuing work permits as it relates to either a pure work permit application, or even with respect to the staffing plan as it relates to identifying and asking about who and what training opportunities have been provided by the companies, and in an essence be able to have some sort of a check to see, well, actually you're saying that there is nobody in the community that has, again, not to pick on the accountants, but that has an accounting degree that is available. But we see here we have 10 or 12 or 2 persons who are registered that have put themselves forward as being either unemployed or persons who are seeking other employment opportunities and the like. And so, Madam Speaker, the point that the Premier has made, I think, is a very valid one, in that the government as a whole, we recognize that this is an area that needs more work. And in that respect, the whole now, which is what has become an e-government initiative, the drive to increase the transparency, to increase the efficiency, and to increase the ability for both Caymanians and people in this community who are seeking employment opportunities to be able to know before a work permit application actually goes towards the board which jobs are available in the community, so they can know how to prepare themselves, how to access those jobs, and how to actually put themselves forward in a way that that information isn't just lost in file 13 if the company decides to not bring that information forward to the immigration boards or the department when the consideration is being made. They can do so, they can register with the NWDA's database, and they can ensure that their information is put forward through that system. Again, the push and the move is to make sure that we have a system that is built, that is fit for purpose, that will allow all jobs in the market to be able to be actually posted and registered. So at any given point in time, a person, a Caymanian who is qualified, who is capable, who is competent, and who is prepared to do the work, they're able to actually know which jobs will be coming online at what time, and then they can prepare themselves accordingly. And that goes beyond just the work of the database system within the NWDA, and now it is that the government has rightfully and thankfully taken this forward as an e-government initiative, trying to pull together the relevant departments. And again, obviously, Immigration Department is key in this whole equation, given the role that it plays in our employment regime and employment system that we have in the Cayman Islands. So again, to pick up on a comment that the elected member from East End made regarding students and the provisions for students, this is a great opportunity, Madam Speaker, for me to update both the member from East End but also the listening public that in tandem with the build out of the increased transparent process or work permit application process, but more in general, work accessibility process is what I'd like to term it. Basically, as I said, allowing all persons in the community, and in particular Caymanians, to be able to know which jobs are available prior to those jobs being advertised overseas or anywhere else, by having a system that is robust, by having a system that's connected, and therefore by having a system that actually serves the needs of our people in this country. We are at the NWDA. The NWDA is looking to continue to build out its database to include a student interface, because the Scholarship Secretariat, which sits within the Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs, is actually attached to the NWDA in the sense that we're now looking to ensure that students that we have on scholarship, they are in their connection and they feed into the work of the NWDA when it comes to placements after or even during their time while they're in school, when they come home on summer breaks, and likewise, or students who are currently here as well studying locally when they're on summer breaks, Easter breaks, Christmas breaks. They tap into the work of the NWDA from the broader training and development aspect as it relates to internships. There's a national internship program, Madam Speaker, that was rolled out last summer, and it is going to be rolled out again or continued this summer, and we're hoping that additional companies would get on board, because again, that creates a great opportunity for companies to actually try before they buy, but also it creates a great opportunity for our students who are studying the academic or the theoretical aspects of their chosen career to get real, tangible, practical experience in the area that they're hoping to qualify in, or to get the requisite educational or training or vocational qualifications in order to do that job. So it's about the government not just working across ministries, which we certainly need to do a better job at, across departments, across ministries, to deal with this issue of employment, but also within the Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs itself, trying to connect the dots between the various departments to make sure that we're providing for the needs of our people in the best and most efficient way, by creating opportunities from not just to be able to get educated, but once you're educated, then creating those pathways to actually accessing employment. And of course, again, this system that we have as it relates to requiring companies to provide suitable and adequate training opportunities is an area that is key. We just need to make sure we figure out how to make it work to the maximum benefit of us as a people, as a country, and as a growing nation. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call in the mover if he wishes to exercise the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, once again, I am truly disappointed that the government is not supporting the simple amendment which will provide opportunities for Caymanians to find employment, and also for the people seeking employment to help the government regulate the process, because they can have access to it themselves and see what's going on. The government will never be able to afford to provide the resources to enforce this adequately against the business people that we are protecting here. And Madam Speaker, the Premier in his response said that their concern was the business information and the competitors knowing what they're doing. Well, Madam Speaker, there really isn't anything in a business. This is not a business plan for the company. This is simply a projected staff that the company may require for work permit purposes over the next 5 years. There's nothing in this document that will tell people what the form's plans are, that they don't already know, because everything in this is public knowledge. They have to put an ad in the paper for every single position that they apply permit for. They have to put the qualifications so you know what specialties they're going into. They have to put the salaries that they're paying them so you know what they're paying them. I have in my hand a business staffing plan. This is the format for it. Position number 1. General manager, stroke, financial controller. Post holder, blank. Conditions, recruit outside Jamaica. Comments, blank. What's in that is going to tell anybody what the business plan is by the general manager or the financial controller? Nothing. And Madam Speaker, we have to stop being on the side of the employer. Somebody here has to start advocating for the employee. We're providing everything that the government can think about to make it easier for an employer to get a permit. Every possible advantage that we can give it. We even make it now so they can do it electronically. They can go on to portals, they can find this, and they can find that. But the employee, person looking employment, has very little assistance and very little access to the kind of information that they need. Madam Speaker, this is a serious problem. You know. The latest statistic published by the government, minimum wage report, page 24, table 2.5, educational attainment of the working age population, the labor force, unemployment persons, and educational attainment, specific unemployment rates. High school, educational level, complete high school, 1,224 Caymanians unemployed. Post-secondary, college, university, 663 people unemployed. Madam Speaker, I've said on the floor of this assembly several times. Revolutions are not caused in countries by poor, disadvantaged people. They are the people that are used. It is them kind of unemployed education people that are going to cause the revolution in this country. We have two options being presented to us on a daily basis throughout this country. The people are asking for a Martin Luther King to come out and get us a part of the pie that we used to have, get it back for us. There are others who are asking for the Malcolm X attitude. We want a part, we must have a part. If we can't get a part, we're going to destroy it. The latter is becoming far more popular than the former, because the young people, the families, they have tried everything in the former of trying to negotiate to be a part of. I have people in my constituency that are losing their house because they borrowed money, because the $20,000 that government give children only get some in trouble unless they're going to some way down the bottom of the totem pole university. The parents have to find at least another 20 to 50 if they're going to make it for a year in a decent university. So they've mortgaged their house to send the first child to university. The first child comes back with a bachelor's degree and a professional qualification. Been home 3 years, can't get no work. Can't help the parents pay the mortgage. The parents have overextended themselves for the second child because they try and get them a master's degree, hoping they'll get a job when they come back. The grandparents are beside themselves. When the children when their children lose the house because they have spent the money educating the children, who we will not provide jobs for by limiting permits. These are not people, Madam Speaker, who didn't make it through high school or who fell through the cracks. These are people who have excelled academically, and we will not tighten up on permits. Why? Because the government needs the revenue. Everything these days is revenue driven. The grandparents are worried because when the children lose the house, they only got a 2 or 3 bedroom house. They can't take in a family of 4 or 5. There's no room. And we worried about one law firm finding out what another law firm could do to make more money, to add to their billions of dollars that they're making, and banking in other countries and buying houses, and when they retire, they move there to live. And the Business Staffing Plan Board, I talk about them a little bit, Madam Speaker. This is personal experience with them dudes. Them on a need to disappoint every one of them this evening. When, Madam Speaker, 2 sitting members of this Parliament take the time to write every member of the Business Staffing Plan Board and the chairman and hand deliver it to the office. What is it, 7 months? Later, you haven't even gotten an acknowledgement that you wrote them. The 2 sitting members are writing on about the same problem, you know. Them 2 sitting members are bold enough to walk up there and knock on the door and say, you want to come into the meeting? And when you go into the meeting, they make fun of you. Tell you don't know what the law say. We pick the law up, we read it from. Chairman looks at it and says, well, I didn't know it said that. And nothing happens about the problem. The problem has been compounded at least 3 places that I know about since that. We were told here, October 2013, about a $20,000 fine if they didn't report qualified Caymanians applying for jobs. Has anybody been fined to date? Not a single person, to my knowledge. You really think they're reporting that Caymanians who are qualified for the position? We all know they're not doing it, but we're not enforcing the law. Madam Speaker, I FOI'd the minutes for 4 months. It is not even recorded in the minutes of the Business Staffing Plan Board that 2 members of Parliament wrote them about a problem. And we're wondering why them 363 people can't get work. And Madam Speaker, all I'm asking the government to do is to provide the mechanism that either one of them can walk in to a firm, depending on their qualifications, and says, I would like to see your business staffing plan because I want to apply for a job. I wonder when the next one expires. They can't get that information nowhere, you know. Because if they go to the immigration department, they're going to tell them it's proprietary information. If you FOI it, the law firms can tie it up in court saying immigration should not have released information? How? How are Caymanians to know what is available in terms of the areas that they wish to work? We are not prepared as a legislative assembly to do anything about it. The Premier says that they're looking at the whole regime, right? It's not a bad regime, you know, Madam Speaker, if it is implemented properly and it is enforced. Any kind of regime you put there, you have the same problem. Because if you look around at the boards in this country, it seems like only 25 people in this country qualified to sit on boards, and whichever was in government is one of them 25 people that sit on the board. Madam Speaker, I believe I have a responsibility to bring these things to the forefront. It is up to all of us sitting in here to decide whether we want to do something about it or not. But I can promise the government one thing. The people that are affected by this are not the tolerant generation I was a part of. My generation was the generation, I'll be 63 in July. Came out of high school in 68, the infancy of the tourism and the financial industry. We were told we had to get educated. We went off and got educated, and we came back and told we now had no experience, we couldn't get the jobs. Most of us went the entrepreneurial view and managed to eke out a living. Now we're being told we're overqualified for positions. Now, how that is possible, Madam Speaker, is beyond me. That somebody can be overqualified for a position. Because the normal managerial argument or administrative argument is that the person is not going to stay. If they're overqualified, they're not going to stay, they can move on to something. Well, at least if you only get it for 2 months, you got 2 months of very good quality worker who can do the job extremely well. How can that not be a benefit to the organization? But you see, Madam Speaker, the one commodity in a capitalist market, in a free society, that has no value is qualified Caymanian labor. Why? Because we allow the route of the work permits. And there's always that way out. And that's the easiest way. We don't have to teach people how to do jobs anymore. We simply fire the Caymanian or fire the work permit and we get another one. Somebody had to teach me to work, Madam Speaker. I went to school, I have a pretty good academic background. When I came out of school, somebody had to teach me to work. These young people are not getting that opportunity. And we need to do something about it. And we need to do something about it urgently. I believe that one way of doing that is allowing them to be able to see what's available. You heard the member for East End talking about the company with the business staffing plan for 4 years. And neither the business staffing plan board, nor the company that has business staffing plan board, know that there was a requirement on its house scholarship, If it lie, they tell us so. Not true, Mr. You can't make this kind of stuff up. We asked them, how is it possible that an administrative officer can alter business staffing plan by approving a permit for a position that's not the business staffing plan? Answer, Chairman, there's nothing wrong with that. All they need to do is after they give them the permit, then they can come to them and get it amended. Total wrong interpretation of the whole process. Anyway, Madam Speaker, I don't think it's any use to me pleading anymore, because I can probably be in front with them and leading the revolution. They're not going to be leading it against me. I can be with them, because it has to come. And Madam Speaker, the Bahamas made their adjustment in the 70s, you know. They made it early enough that they had no bloodshed. We don't have too many moons here to make the adjustment locally and put Caymanians back in charge. We had an opportunity in December when we passed the new business licensing law. We continued the same exemptions that put Caymanians at disadvantages. Doctors, lawyers, them kind of people don't need no business license. No change, nothing. If we don't do it soon, we're not going to do it without bloodshed. Because people are getting fed up. I'll give you another example, Madam Speaker. I started a little seminar, 2 seminars every summer in Northside. Do one with the primary school students and their parents going to high school. And I invite the parents and the children, and I invite Northside children who are already at high school and other resource people, the principals and others, to come in and talk to the parents about the adjustment they need to make between a child going to primary school and one going to high school. How much more work they have to do as parents and how much more work the child has to do. Also have one with people graduating from high school. Same thing. Bring in Northside children who are at college so they can talk about the college experience, the parents. Same purpose again. Inculcating the parents the added commitment that the child must have if they're going to succeed in college. 2009, I did the first one. Almost every child, I think except 2 out of 12, wanted to go off to college. The other 2, they had economic problems. They needed to go to work. Quite understandable. Going home, still looking for work. And if you go to every bar and restaurant in Northside, my whole constituency, nothing but work but holders. Cayman's, one of Cayman's premier bartenders, Andy McCoy, a couple of weeks ago, went to everyone. No vacancy, but everyone got permits. 2014, when I did the seminar, less than half of the children in the seminar want to go on further education. Why? Well, Mr. Ezard, see my cousin, yeah? He come back from university 2 years. He can't get no job. Why go overseas and get educated for? Hard to argue with that, you know, Madam Speaker. We have to spend effort to try to convince them that they still need education. But when they can't see success and they can't see their peers getting jobs because they got educated, it's tough. And Madam Speaker, this is real life situation. And we have to find a way to insist that these young qualified Caymanians must be given opportunities. None of them want to start at the top. They want an opportunity to start a career. But they can't get it. Because they simply go to the immigration board and they get a permit. And they treat them people in permit bad. You know how many people who got status in the big grant come to me now, particularly Jamaicans, Say, Mr. Ezard, you know, when you used to complain that Cayman is going to get no work, you thought you were talking foolishness. Now that I Caymanian, I can't get no work either. Because I worked for so-and-so construction company for 14 years on a permit. They didn't pay me no overtime. They didn't pay this. They didn't pay that. Now that I Caymanian, and they got to pay pension, they got to pay health insurance, and I want my overtime, my vacation, they lay me off, saying I'm going to work. Dozens of them have come to me about that complaint. That's what's happening to our Caymanians. Madam Speaker, we need to do something about it. If this is not the answer, or part of the answer, or at least one step in the ladder on a career, we better find something and find it soon. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, be it therefore resolved that the government consider amending Section 45 of the Immigration Law 2014 revision to require that all businesses that have a business staffing plan make them available for inspection during normal working hours of the business by any member of the public. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no?
No.
The noes have it.
Madam Speaker, could I have a division, please?
Yes, certainly, Madam Clerk. Please call a division.
Honorable Alden McLaughlin.
No.
Honorable Moses Colonel.
No.
Honorable Kurt Tibbetts. Honorable Osmond Bodden.
No.
Honorable Wayne Panton. Honorable Marco Archer.
No.
Honorable Tara Rivers. Honorable Anthony Eden. No. Mr. Winston Connolly.
No.
Mr. Roy McTaggart.
No.
Mr. Joseph Hugh.
No.
Mr. Alva Suku.
No.
Honorable McKeeva Bush.
Aye.
Mr. Barney Bush. Captain Eugene Ebanks. Mr. Ezra Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Arden McLean.
Aye.
The results of the division are as follows: 4 ayes, 11 noes, 2 absentees. Accordingly, the motion has failed. Before we move on to the next item of business, I want to, on behalf of all honourable members, welcome Lord Nesby from the UK Parliament, who's graced us with his presence in the gallery, and just to welcome you to our jurisdiction and trust that you would enjoy the proceedings here today. Madam Clerk.
Private Amendment Motion number 16 of 2014-15. Verification of gasoline fuel costs to be moved by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the first elected member for West Bay.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move motion number 16 standing in my name, which reads as follows. Whereas the gasoline and fuel prices impacts every sector of our society, and whereas the gasoline and diesel costs available in the Cayman Islands has consistently been priced at a higher level to those available on the global gasoline or oil commodity market, and whereas it is imperative that government be placed in a position whereby it can ascertain by way of factual, verifiable and transparent cost documents the actual costs before charges or profit margins being added of all gasoline and fuel being imported into the Cayman Islands, be it therefore now resolved that government immediately consider a multifaceted approach to bring cost relief to the people of the Cayman Islands by the following steps. 1, to undertake to draft the necessary enabling legislation towards a suitable energy and fuel sector law, that while such legislation legislative drafting is taking place, government further immediately undertake the following. One, cause to be obtained from our gasoline fuel suppliers actual cost documents for each shipment of gasoline or fuel imported into these Cayman Islands. Two, cause to be conducted a forensic audit to verify the accuracy of these documents against actual underlying market prices for these identical products on the open commodity markets. Three, cause to be amended or effected the necessary changes to strengthen the Office of the Petroleum Inspectorate to be granted sufficient legal powers, inclusive of subpoena powers, to effectively manage the gasoline fuel suppliers and the various retail outlets to ensure market prices, plus a reasonable and verifiable markup is passed on to the general public and the Cayman Islands as a whole.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
The motion has now been duly moved. Is open for debate. Does the honourable member wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when this motion was filed by us, the 14th of January this year, it was a concern for the well-being of all the people of these islands, all of us having to use fuel in one way or the other. There is no escaping from anyone using fuel. One either uses it directly or indirectly, but there can be no debate that in today's world in which we live, that this single commodity does not directly impact each and every one of us. Some more than others by what we use. It impacts us across a very broad spectrum. If you use utilities, it impacts you. If you have a motor vehicle, it impacts you. If you buy groceries at the supermarkets, it impacts you. If you buy goods from overseas and you ship it here in the Cayman Islands, it impacts you by way of ocean freight costs or otherwise. If you go out to a restaurant to eat a meal, it impacts you. By way of the restaurant passing it on, it's indirect cost to me and you, the consumer. That racket is a constituent of mine trying to get me, they will not relent. Sorry. Madam Speaker, it is fair to say that if one is alive, they will be impacted by fuel and energy costs. So it behoves us as a legislature to act on behalf of the people in a meaningful way. All people, not only on this issue, but others, also to cause the prices which they are being charged reflect prices which are acceptable and fair. The global oil glut that is currently impacting oil and gasoline prices is here to stay. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, reiterated in its monthly bulletin on Monday, April 13th, that it isn't willing to cut production from its current output target of 30 million barrels a day, despite the global oil glut. The average U.S. retail gas prices on April 14th was U.S. $2.36 a gallon, U.S. gallons, or if converted at 82, would give you an equivalent of $1.94 a gallon CI. Sadly, Madam Speaker, the average gasoline prices available to the motoring public in Grand Cayman for the same period was $4.27, or $5 CI, that is, or $5.21 a gallon US. This is a difference of $2.85 US, $2.33 a gallon CI, or 121% price differential when viewed against regular per gallon retail prices in the United States. Madam Speaker, as we speak today, the New York Mercantile Exchange and the Intercontinental Exchange, Inc., ICE, I think it's called, Futures Europe is quoting oil prices for April delivery of US $43.52 US and US $53 per barrel respectively. Those gasoline futures translates to an underlying per gallon price of US $1.82. It can therefore be said, Madam Speaker, that international companies can purchase all the oil they wish for April 2015 delivery at around US $1.82 US a gallon. Madam Speaker, the global price of diesel is also falling. Falling, that is, everywhere except here in the Cayman Islands. Diesel futures and the global commodity exchanges reflect prices for April delivery of $1.79 US a gallon. The US Energy Information Administration said on Monday, April 13th, that the national average retail price of diesel fell to 2.754 a gallon, the lowest since December the 28th, 2009. Madam Speaker, on April 6th, 2015, the lowest diesel price available in the Cayman Islands was $4.25 CI a gallon, and the highest diesel price was $4.66 a gallon, or an average of $4.46 CI if you combine the two prices and you divide it by 2. Madam Speaker, if one looks at the retail prices for gasoline and diesel in Grand Cayman for January 13th and this year, on April 6, 2015, we will observe that on January 13, 2015, the lowest prices for regular gas, $4.74. Premium gas, $4.84. Diesel, $4.96. On January 13th, same time, highest price, $4 regular gas, $4.84. Premium gas, $5.60. Diesel, $5.74. On April 6th, 2015, lowest price, regular gas, $3.97. Premium gas, $4.35, and diesel, $4.25. And on April 6th, the highest prices, regular gas, $4.27, premium gas, $4.50, and diesel, $4.66, all CI prices. So if you were to take the lowest and the highest prices for each of those periods and divide them by 2 to get an average per gallon price, you would observe that between January 13th and April 6th, then the regular gas price fell by only 14%, or 67 cents. The premium gas price fell by 15%, or 79 cents, and the diesel fell by 16.6, or 89 cents. And so at first glance, Madam Speaker, one might conclude that our gasoline and diesel prices are falling, and thus we should jump for joy. That is exactly what our local gasoline and diesel importers would like us to do. Sit and be happy for the reduction. But Madam Speaker, the sad fact is that our local prices are nowhere near what they should be to reflect real market-driven prices. Our gasoline and diesel prices are artificially inflated, and it is now time for us to have, and we've been saying this for a long time again, a more debate about this anomaly, because it is affecting so many of us and bringing our cost of living so much higher. The motion which is before us today seeks to engage all of us in this assembly and this frank debate. I do hope that all of us don't have to speak so we can all get out of here quicker. But, Madam Speaker, we can do better, and we must do better to protect the quality of life of our fellow constituents by seeking to reduce our cost of living wherever possible in a very meaningful way. Madam Speaker, currently the only legislation on our statute books that deals with fuel is our Dangerous Substance Handling and Storage Law, passed in 2003. That essentially only deals with the handling, safety, and storage of our fuel and gasoline products. My motion requests that government considers a multifaceted approach to bring cost relief to the people of these islands. The first step is the undertaking of drafting suitable energy and fuel sector legislation. This would be our national energy policy and would serve our people by ensuring that the government has sufficient mechanisms in place to allow it to be provided with the actual cost of the fuel being imported into these islands, and also to ensure that the general public is being charged prices that are fair and reasonable and that are hinged to global commodity prices that can be cross-checked, if necessary, on the world commodity exchanges. The fuel, or the energy and fuel sector legislation, would also be the vehicle that would set targets in carbon dioxide emissions, reductions, renewable energy incentives and goals, and ensure transparency, Madam Speaker, in pricing which is passed on to the general consumer. It would be our national policy that will concern itself about satisfying demand and keeping prices affordable. And because we all live in this global village where climate change and a growing demand due to growth in population in the developing world is of real concern, a good and effective policy would assist us in facing the trilemma of competitiveness, energy security, and sustainability. The last piece of what I call the trilemma, sustainability, relates to using non-fossil fuel-based energy, the going green of energy, which enhances energy security by producing our own energy rather than importing energy, which is so costly. And a lot of people are talking about it and wanting to drift to it and get to it. Mark you here, it still seems to be costly. We don't know yet how much. Anyway, Madam Speaker, we in this chamber cannot be satisfied to say that we can do without any such thinking and effective energy and legislation. The government, I hope, would accept this motion in the spirit of cooperation in which it is being offered and embark on having instructions issued to commence the drafting of the enabling legislation towards that by way of suitable fuel sector law. And I have heard talk of a utilities commission. And I guess that is more or less the same thing. We use different words, but it will entail all of those things. And certainly the government would have my vote to support them on that initiative. The motion, though, also encourages the government that while that exercise is ongoing, that certain other steps be taken to endeavor to ascertain from the oil importers, namely Esso Sol and Rubis, documents that could result upon close scrutiny of a price reduction across the Cayman Islands. And yes, Madam Speaker, that would include Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, where I might add here, prices are even higher than what we pay in Grand Cayman for our gasoline and diesel consumption. That is why the motion also would grant sufficient legal powers for, or the motion asks for sufficient legal powers for full analytical analysis to be undertaken to verify the accuracy of these documents against actual underlying market prices for identical commodity prices on the open market, the open commodity market. Further, Madam Speaker, the motion also seeks to have vested in the Office of the Petroleum Inspectorate sufficient legal powers, inclusive of subpoena powers if necessary, in order that an office or that office can have effectively manage the gasoline fuel importers to ensure market prices are passed on to the general public and the people of these islands. Madam Speaker, we have a rather strange occurrence that goes on in these islands. And that is, whenever global fuel price rise, our fuel importers, all familiar cliche excuse of lagging effect, in quotes, goes out the window, and our local fuel and gasoline prices are increased within 2 weeks of any global price increase. And research would show that when prices are falling, as they are now, and as they have been since July last year, we can never seem to escape the lagging effect, and real market-driven prices can never be reflected at our retail pumps. That just cannot be right. And we you know, as you drive, and you drive away from the gas station, we all mumble, and you hear people cursing outright the gas pump owners. That's not where the problem is. It's what is handed down to them. And that just cannot be acceptable practice. All leading authorities, Madam Speaker, and journals point to a further easing in global oil and fuel prices caused by an oversupply from the United States and other major suppliers. There is more supply than demand that has resulted in an oil glut. All indicators point to lower fuel prices extending well into 2016. That's what they're saying. But, Madam Speaker, and while speaking and in conclusion, perhaps I should mention another recent event that will act to further drive down and stabilize world fuel prices. On April 2nd, Iran and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, plus Germany, I think they call P5+1, reached a framework agreement that could result in the lifting of oil-related sanctions against Iran. If that new framework agreement between the P5+1 and Iran results in a comprehensive deal and a lifting of sanctions, it could significantly change the short-term energy outlook forecast by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA there, for oil supply, demand, and prices, which, Madam Speaker, still assumes that Iran's production will stay close to the current level through 2016. Iran is believed to hold at least some 30 million barrels in storage, and the EIA believes Iran has the technical capability to ramp up crude oil production by at least 700,000 barrels a day by the end of 2016. Madam Speaker, consumers across the United States and even into Canada are enjoying a boost in earnings by way of reduced fuel and gasoline prices. And these are real savings, real prices, as I mentioned earlier, what the cost is in the United States as against what we get here. There's absolutely no reason why the good, hardworking people of our islands should not also be beneficiaries of these same lower global fuel and gasoline prices. It is my view that the retail gasoline and diesel prices can be reduced further so that our retail prices for gasoline would fall to an acceptable level, anywhere between $2.75 and $3.15 for a gallon of diesel. But that's just my thought, and I'm not the expert, but I believe that given what we've seen and what we know, if we can and pinpoint on the importers, then I believe they will be forced to bring down the cost. And on the basis that we import some 55 million gallons of fuel into our islands annually, our actions, hopefully, by accepting this motion and seeing it through to its fruition, would result in a cost saving anywhere of $80-odd million for our motoring public. And when extrapolated across the wide socio-economic spectrum that our fuel consumption impacts, the immediate economic impact would equate to some $330 million by way of immediate economic stimuli. So, Madam Speaker, and you can say that's economic jargon, but the facts are, firstly, if we get them and we know exactly, and I know that we don't have powers and we sit down and trying to be good managers or good partners with our private sector, we try not to put pressure on with too much legislation because we want not to be overburdening our private sector. But when we see certain steps and over the years we can't get anything done and we talk and we befriend, then we have to take other steps. That's why I hope that the government will move as quickly as possible on that legislation. Bring it down to that level, and those other savings will be extrapolated across the wide socio-economic spectrum. So, Madam Speaker, I would hope that the government takes this in the way it is. Kennedy said, if not us, who? If not now, when? And so I am very pleased to be able to table this private member's motion, myself and the deputy leader, and I look forward to what members have to say, and hopefully government will accept it. Thank you kindly.
We've almost reached the hour of interruption. Recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are almost through the business for this meeting. And I know some members have other obligations. As we are at the hour of interruption, I'm going to propose that we adjourn until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I expect that we will get through the balance of the business by midday.
The question is Honorable House to stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The House is accordingly adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.